Good afternoon. Today's GDP numbers from Statistics Canada confirm that our country and its workers are in desperate need of economic leadership. We are almost a year into the pandemic, and Mr. Trudeau has failed to put forward an economic plan that will get Canadians back to work. La pandémie a débuté il y a près d'un an déjà. Monsieur Trudeau n'a toujours pas présenté de plan économique pour que les Canadiens reprennent le travail. Under the Liberal government, Canada has a record economic decline, the highest unemployment in the G7, and the worst economic growth per capita since the Great Depression. The fact is, Canada spent more per capita in this crisis and is achieving the worst outcomes in the G7 when it comes to vaccine rollout, employment, and business confidence. This unprecedented health and economic crisis was always going to require government assistance and a plan for recovery. Conservatives have worked with the government to help Canadians, but the Liberal government still has no plan. Unlike the Liberal government, Conservatives will work hard to promote an economic recovery that benefits all Canadians. Contrairement aux libéraux de M. Trudeau, les conservateurs vont travailler sans relâche pour relancer l'économie. Tous les Canadiens vont en profiter. This means jobs and growth in every sector of the economy and every part of this great country. Cela signifie des créations d'emplois et de la croissance économique dans tous les secteurs et dans toutes les régions du pays. Conservatives are ready to do whatever it takes to get the economy back on track and secure our future. Canada's Conservatives got Canada out of the last global recession by getting Canadians working and by holding the line on taxes. And I know that we can lead Canada out of these challenges too. Les conservateurs du Canada nous ont sortis de la dernière récession. Je sais que nous pourrons sortir le Canada de celle-ci. I'd be happy to take your questions.
So we'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. As usual, one question, one follow-up per reporters. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions, commençons par les questions au téléphone. Comme à l'habitude, une question suivie par journaliste. Operator, do we have a first question?
Thank you, merci. If you have a question, please press star 1 on your device keypad. Si vous désirez poser une question, veuillez appuyer sur les touches étoile 1 de votre appareil. You may cancel your question at any time by pressing star 2. Vous pouvez à tout moment annuler votre question en appuyant sur les touches étoile et 2. And our first question, notre première question est de David Turton from CBC News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. You're comparing us with the U.S., and there's lots of things we could compare ourselves with the U.S. to, but I guess when it comes down to it, I mean, some might say from a purely infections point of view in terms of the number of coronavirus cases and the number of deaths, Canada has fared much better. So I guess my question to you is, which would you rather have? Their economic numbers or less Canadians dying, less Canadians getting infected?
Certainly we want the health and economic well-being of Canadians to be at the forefront of everything we do, David. And that's why we've worked with the government throughout the health crisis. But let's remember, compared to the G7, Canada has spent more per capita and has the worst outcomes in vaccine deployment, in employment itself, and in business confidence. And the GDP numbers released today show that without a plan to secure that economic future, we are in serious difficulty. And so we're pushing the government to do that. We're pushing for economic growth and job creation in all sectors and in all regions of the country.
Many Canadians are probably wondering, when are we going to see your economic plan and, your other plans, whether it be, for the environment, for other things that Canadians would say are important. So when are we going to see your plan, the Conservative plan, to rebuild after this pandemic?
Every day, David, I'm speaking to Canadians in every part of this country, whether it's small chambers of commerce like on Vancouver Island and Comox last week, or business leaders across the country, to hear from them. And they're worried about investing in Canada. They're worried about opportunities for their workforce and for workers. I'm speaking to union leaders to get their input on how we can secure jobs in every part of the country, in small towns, in Northern Ontario, in energy, in softwood. That will be our relentless focus, is job creation. We are also developing great policies on everything from climate change to support for the great work unions are doing to build skills training and capacity. So I'm excited to meet more Canadians, and before the election, we will have a very detailed plan, David.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. The next question. La prochaine question est de Annie Bergeron-Oliver de CTV National News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello, Mr. O'Toole. Thank you very much for taking our questions. I'm hearing, you're pushing for greater economic growth. You want to see more job creation. I'm wondering what specifically do you want to see in the federal government upcoming budget? And I'm hoping you can provide some specific examples of what you think the government can do right now to help the economy and help prosper economic growth.
Great question, Annie. This budget, we've gone 2 years without a budget, and Canada's at a crossroads. I want the government to succeed on vaccines. I'm hoping to see more vaccines in coming weeks. But the crossroads is this. If Mr. Trudeau wants to reimagine our economy and pick what jobs and what sectors he supports, that's the wrong path. We need to support job creation in every sector, in every part of the country, so that people can get working, that families can be productive, the economy can open up. That's what Canadians want to see, not a reimagined Ottawa knows best. So we're hopeful that the Liberal Party will put the well-being of Canadians before their own election plans, and the budget will tell.
My follow-up is about, there's some slow signs from Statistics Canada that the economy is very slowly starting to recover. And with mass vaccination campaigns now beginning, more and more people are expected, hopefully in the next few months, to slowly be able to get back to work while remaining healthy. And, over the last year, the federal government has spent hundreds of billions of dollars in stimulus and aid packages to try to help people. I'm wondering, how much longer do you think the federal government can continue with these types of programs? And how do you envision Canada slowly transitioning off some of these programs like CERB while still trying to help the economy and the people who are suffering?
That's an important question, Annie. Thank you, because we have spent more on a per capita basis than other G7 countries. And as I said in my remarks, are having poorer outcomes when it comes to employment for Canadians. And that is what concerns me. And what little growth we're seeing is generally from a very hot housing market and from some inventory purchases. There's very little confidence in businesses to hire. And as you said, as we ramp down emergency spending, we need Canadians working in every sector and every region. So we can't afford Ottawa choosing what regions and what type of jobs it supports. We need to get everyone working. That will be our relentless focus, with an acute focus on small businesses, because we know small town, large cities, restaurants, service, small businesses, often family owned, are in crisis, and they will need some direct support. We hope to see that in the budget.
Operator, next question.
The next question, la prochaine question est de Alex Boutillier from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Speaking to some of your MPs over the weekend and today, I'm hearing concerns that they're not fully aware of exactly what they're pitching to voters in the upcoming election, which could happen, in the coming months. They say that they don't understand the strategy of your party or what you're offering. Does that concern you, that your own MPs seem to feel like they're in the dark on things like economic policy and environmental policy?
Alex, we're united in a singular focus of making sure Canada leads the world in the economic recovery post-COVID. I think all Canadians, including members of our caucus who are in their ridings this week, hearing about people that don't know when their grandmother or loved one will be vaccinated. They hate seeing Canada in 50th place in rankings of deployments. They're worried we've spent a lot of money and we're seeing the highest unemployment. So there's frustration around the country. That's why we need a plan to secure a future for everyone in all parts of the country, and why the Mr. Trudeau experimental route is shaking confidence of business in other sectors. So we're going to be relentlessly focused on securing a future for all Canadians, as I said, in all sectors and in all regions of the country. We need to make sure no one is left behind in the recovery from COVID.
Thanks. And you have a policy convention coming up in March this month. I'm wondering what you hope to get out of that, and whether that sort of process will determine your ultimate pitch to Canadians in the upcoming election.
Great question, Alex. I'm very excited about, in a few weeks, our policy convention. It will be the largest in the history of our party. We're smashing fundraising records. We've got tremendous interest in being candidates for our riding, including in ridings we haven't won in 20 years. Former Liberal cabinet minister in Prince Edward Island has left the Liberal Party, is running for our party. There's great momentum, and the policy convention will allow us to get back to that singular focus I mentioned. How can we make sure that Canada leads the G7 in job creation, in economic growth post-COVID? I want the vaccines in arms as quickly as possible so we can secure that economic future. I will be getting briefed on some of the great grassroots initiatives that will be presented at the convention, the record numbers. I'm excited that we're coming together to get a plan finalized ahead of an election that I think should come after Canadians are vaccinated, but we're preparing with great ideas.
And we will now take questions from the room. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions de la salle. Man?
Good afternoon, Mr. O'Toole. This is Man Hamidi with the Canadian Press. If the government shouldn't pick up big winners for support, do you think there should be dedicated aid for airline industry and for oil sector?
We've said from the beginning of the crisis that there will be some highly affected sectors. In fact, the government followed our lead and has created a credit facility for highly affected sectors, but has not put the details, had not allowed industries to access it. Loans, assistance packages are bridges out of troubled waters to secure jobs and secure economic activity. I worked on some restructurings in the private sector, and if you preserve those jobs, you save the pensions, you save the supply chain networks, and you survive to thrive when the economy recovers. So there should be some specific sector packages so that our economy can rebound when the world starts getting back to normal. That will be our focus.
But you said that the Canadian government has spent per capita more than any G7 country. Don't you think if you have specific support for certain sectors and also you have support for everyone, that would make the amount of money the government spent to achieve the recovery that you're talking about will be even larger?
Well, it's a good question. The government has no plan, but they talk about building back better. And that really means they're going to be leaving some people and some sectors that they don't like out of the economic recovery. Bill C-69 shows that Mr. Trudeau doesn't like the energy sector, doesn't like resources. We don't have a softwood lumber agreement through 3 different U.S. administrations. That's why Conservatives, starting this week, created a Canada-U.S. Economic Committee to secure those jobs. 7 mills have closed in the last 2 years in British Columbia. We need to get people working in all sectors. It's why I'm speaking to union leaders as well. We need everyone working the economy to be productive so that we can have a plan to tackle the $400 billion in deficit that Mr. Trudeau has developed. We need to get the country moving and working.
And the last question will be on the phone, operator.
The next question, la prochaine question est de Lina Dib de la Presse canadienne. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour Monsieur O'Toole. Moi, j'aimerais savoir pourquoi est-ce que en comité tout à l'heure, vos députés n'ont pas appuyé le projet de loi pour une déclaration d'impôt unique au Québec. Je pensais que c'était quelque chose avec lequel vous étiez d'accord. Leur abstention a conduit à la défaite du projet de loi privé.
C'est une question importante parce que après la pandémie, on doit cibler sur les emplois dans chaque secteur, dans toutes les régions, incluant les régions au Québec. Et j'ai des inquiétudes avec les emplois dans le Saguenay à Shawinigan aussi. Donc, on a des questions raisonnables sur ça. Mais comme j'ai dit, on va travailler en étroite collaboration avec l'Assemblée nationale sur leurs priorités, la création de richesses et aussi la loi 101 pour les entreprises à charte fédérale. Donc, on va travailler ensemble comme un partenaire, pas un paternaliste comme le gouvernement de M. Trudeau.
Mais sur la question de la déclaration d'impôt unique, vous vous étiez engagé à appuyer ça. Vous avez dit publiquement que vous étiez d'accord avec ça, même au moment où le NPD s'inquiétait pour les emplois. Vous, votre position, me semble, était beaucoup plus claire. Alors, je ne comprends pas, vous avez changé d'avis depuis?
Non, j'ai parlé fréquemment sur les emplois dans les régions. Et il y a un risque pour les emplois là-bas à cause d'un changement avec les fonds pour les taxes et impôts uniques. Et c'est pourquoi on doit travailler avec les syndicats, avec les maires et les municipalités là-bas. Et comme j'ai dit, à Shawinigan, dans le Saguenay aussi, il y a beaucoup d'incertitudes maintenant. Et après la pandémie, c'est important. Les emplois d'un gouvernement fédéral, c'est les emplois importants pour les Québécois et Québécoises dans les régions. Et ça serait ma priorité.
Thank you. Merci. Ceci me fait la conférence de presse. This concludes the press conference.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.